Good to have Shabbos, everyone. Parshas Mishpatim, Shabbos Avrachim, month of Adar, Parshas Shkalim. So everything coming together. We spoke in years before about the month of Adar is the month of Moshe Rabbeinu. Haman thought that this would be a month that would be lucky for him. It's the month that Moshe Rabbeinu passes away, but actually it's also the month that Moshe Rabbeinu is born. And the yom of the Hailedus of the Tzaddik of Moshe Rabbeinu is Mechaper Niyem HaMisa, atones for and elevates even anything that you could look at that's negative about the day of death. Especially we say Moshe Rabbeinu Leimeis, Moshe doesn't die, he's still alive. The Maises of Moshe, the actions of Moshe lives on. Even the Mishkan is buried. Moshe has an idea of emes is forever. And the power of Moshe, and Moshe, the Spashtusa de Moshe, the extensions of Moshe throughout the generations, the leadership of the Jewish people, live through the Jewish people and elevate the Jewish people, and this is celebrated in the month of Adar, the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's also emphasized both in Parshas Mishpatim and in the idea of Parshas Shkalim. In the Chassidish Maimarim, starting from the Alter Rebbe in Torah or Parshas Mishpatim, the famous Maimar Kis Sikne Eved Ivri, the Alter Rebbe asks, and the Rebbe brings down in the Maimarim, especially the first Maimar Parshas Mishpatim in the year 1951, that why does it say Kis Sikne when you will buy singular? And he's talking to the Jewish people, it should say when you, plural, will buy a servant. And the Alter Rebbe explains that the idea of it's Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu is koine. He makes an acquisition in the Eved Ivri. And the Eved Ivri represents that we know that there's two types of souls. There's what's called Zera Adam, Zera Behema. The souls of the Jewish people which are like man, and the souls of the Jewish people that are represented in the concept of Behema, of animal. And the difference is in the concept of Das. Das is proper connection, hiskashrus, connection to the ideas of godliness. A person can have ideas of godliness in their head. They know that there's a God on the highest of levels of knowledge and the highest of level of understanding. But there's no iskashrus, there's no connection, there's no das. And Moshe Rabbeinu gives das to the Jewish people, and which is like explained in the Maimer of the Atat Tzavah that the Rebbe gave out in Purim Katan. And this theme is also expressed in the idea of Parshas Kisisa that the Rebbe brings down in the Maimer of Kisisa, that of Shkalim, that when that Moshe Rabbeinu saw the Jewish people, he asked, how could they be a kapara? How could we find atonement? And Hashem says that when you will count the Jewish people, kisisa, and the Medrash says that it's not something that happens once, but every time the Jewish people read the Parsha Kisisa, it's Moshe standing there counting the Jewish people, because the idea of kisisa, to elevate the Jewish people, that they're only half a shekel, and then they can connect to the other half of the shekel. The burning shekel, like Hashem showed, Matbea Shalesh, a shekel of fire, that represents the essence of the Jewish people, that they're able to give themselves and bring a response from Hashem, which is a sign of Iskashrus, a sign of connection, a sign of Das. How does that happen? Through Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, any time we count Parshas Shkalim, which represents the idea of elevating the Jewish people, bringing us to an idea of Das, of understanding, and like the Rebbe says in the Maimer, that what is Das? Das is three components. That is Iskashrus, to connect, to hakara, to recognize, and lahargish, to feel. That a person shouldn't just know Hashem, but you should feel Hashem. It should be real. It should be something that's part of who you are. And then we bring that light of knowledge and that connection not into only our spiritual, into our nefesh halakis, our godly soul, but also into our animal soul. Like we learned in the Maimer last week, that when a person stands in shul and a person stands at Farbrengen and they feel spiritual, that's not your animal soul getting lit up. That's your nefesh halakis. That's a light to your godly soul. But when you go out to the world and you interact in the world and you elevate the animal, the Zera Behema, which within you, and you like the Alter Rebbe says this week in Tanya, you do small moments of iskafia, of restraining yourself, small moments of finding time for Yiddishkeit within your day-to-day schedule. That's iskashus, that's connected, and that power we get from Moshe Rabbeinu. So the real simcha that we're celebrating, both in the month of Adar and Parshas Shkalim and Mishpatim, is our connection to Moshe Rabbeinu, to this Pashtusa, to the Rebbe, that we have. Our relationship is that we're supposed to get das, we're supposed to be able to connect, feel, understand godliness. And may this be a month where Moshe Rishon, Moshe is the first Redeemer, where Moshe Goyal Achron, he's the final Redeemer, that we should be Zeicha to the Mashiach Tzidkenu B'Karv Mamash Shabbos.